This is the Dallas Morning News.
Eat, Drink, DFW from the Dallas Morning News is made possible by Central Market.
Hi, and welcome to Eat, Drink, DFW, the podcast from the Dallas Morning News food team. Each week, we take a look at the food and drink trends happening in North Texas, learn some new recipes, and sometimes even get cooking tips from you, our listeners. I'm Anna Butler, the Dallas Morning News' food and events editor, and this week we're diving in deep on Ozempic and other drugs associated with weight loss. And later in the show, we'll be catching up on some of the latest restaurant news in North Texas. That's all coming up right after this.
Central Market is really into food. Like when we say cheese, it's in 12 languages into food. Butchers, bakers, and sushi roll makers into food. We're talking so obsessive about quality you can shop blindfolded into food. Central Market is really into food. If you are too, then let us turn your shopping list into a treasure map. Get inspired, get adventurous, or just get a chef-made dinner when you've got more taste buds than time. No place makes every meal more amazing like Central Market. Really into food. Shop now at centralmarket.com.
For all the latest news from our food team, visit dallasnews.com/food. And if you're behind on episodes, follow Eat, Drink, DFW anywhere you listen to podcasts. We'd also love to hear from you, so if you need restaurant suggestions, recipe ideas, or even have a topic you think we'd like, send it to eatdrink@dallasnews.com. I am joined by our food writers Sarah Blaskovich and Imelda Garcia, but real quick, I do have some news to share. You might be wondering where Claire Baller is, and she had a beautiful baby girl about a month early over the weekend.
Yay.
So Claire, she's going to be out for a few months. That being said, we do actually have a special guest today, which was planned before Claire's absence. Miriam Fauzia, our science fellow here at the Dallas Morning News. You might remember Miriam from previous episodes where we've talked about alcohol, adding spices to food, and so many more things. Today, we're focusing on a topic that's been hot for a while, people taking drugs like Ozempic and other things to lose weight. And Miriam has been asking some experts about it. One of the things I saw in the food world that I've never seen before, though, was here in Dallas. And it was a wine bar, and they cited Ozempic for one of the reasons that they closed.
That's right.
Wow.
You know, I thought we would be talking about Ozempic when it comes to restaurants a little bit more than we have been. Feels like sort of this secret that we're not supposed to talk about. And when Trova Wine Bar closed in Preston Center in Dallas, she said a lot of her customers were apparently taking Ozempic and Ozempic-like products. And because of that reason, according to the Trova Wine Bar owner, they weren't eating when they were coming to drink, and they were even drinking less. So this is the first time, but certainly not the last, that we're going to see a restaurateur sort of blaming the surgence of Ozempic and related drugs to the failure of a restaurant or a bar.
I will say, too, one of my favorite things is that they were like, hey, they are drinking less. I don't think you're supposed to drink at all on it either.
We should ask science reporter Miriam Fauzia, are we supposed to drink if we're taking Ozempic or Ozempic-like products?
It does seem that you can drink alcohol, but it may come with some problematic complications. So if you are taking these drugs, I would recommend to talk to a medical professional, because it does seem that alcohol can decrease your blood sugar levels, and these drugs also can decrease your blood sugar levels.
So if you can't drink alcohol and you don't eat, what is Ozempic doing to your body?
That is a very good question, Imelda. So I spoke to Dr. Jaime Almandoz, who is an endocrinologist and a weight loss specialist at UT Southwestern Medical Center. He explained to me the basic gist of how these drugs work is that they make people feel full faster. They up your satiety levels. Y'all remember satiety?
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Y'all remember satiety. And they decrease feelings of hunger, which makes you eat less. They also encourage weight loss by slowing down gastric emptying, which is the rate at which food moves through your stomach to your small intestine. This is similar somewhat to the effect of bariatric or gastric bypass surgery. And the causative agent of all this is a synthetic version of a hormone that our bodies make called glucagon-like peptide 1 or GLP-1.
Oh,
Now, Miriam, I've thought about Ozempic maybe more than I'm willing to admit. I've thought so much about how like you can take a pill and get skinny, period. That seems too magical to me. So what's the catch?
I don't actually think there is a catch, and I will be completely frank and open. I myself have been on these drugs. Over the last year, I've lost 90 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We have an insider.
You have an insider in your midst.
What's your restaurant regimen been like in the last year?
I don't go to restaurants.
No.
Yeah, I can't eat the portions that are at restaurants. I can only take maybe a couple bites. And I have also been off these drugs for a couple weeks now because I have reached my goal weight. But even now, it's like my brain has been completely rewired. I can't eat the things that I used to eat. I loved sugar. I could not eat sugar in moderation. Moderation was not a term that we weren't on familiar terms. So restaurants don't have the same appeal for me as they did a year ago.
How many months did it take?
I mean, it was over the course of a year. I started in November of 2023. And as I said, I stopped these medications maybe at least 2 months ago almost.
That is incredible, Miriam. And I know that you've looked into the science of all of this. You, our science reporter, would not have taken what I called a miracle drug without understanding what the potential side effects are. So we don't know what happens to anybody who took Ozempic or something like it today. We don't know what happens to them in 20 years. Do you have any concerns about that? Or do you have any thoughts about what 20 years from now looks like?
To be honest, no, because these drugs seem to have appeared on the scene just a couple years ago, but that's not actually the case. GLP-1 was first discovered back in 1986. Like the discovery that was simultaneously a research group in Boston and in Copenhagen in Denmark. There are diabetics who have been on these drugs for long term, and we know, I mean, yes, there are side effects. I'm not going to be, backing Big Pharma and saying everyone should be on these drugs and these drugs are safe. I mean, there can be side effects, mostly gastrointestinal side effects, because these drugs do impact, as I mentioned earlier, gastric emptying. But we know from decades of research that these drugs are, for the most part, safe.
So you are saying that some people have been taking this for decades even?
So research has been ongoing for decades, but federally approved for use in patients has been going on since like mid-2000s.
So it changed your appetite and your cravings and everything, but what about mentally?
Yeah. So we know anecdotally that so many other different, I won't say mental health effects, but like I even came across a couple Reddit posts where people were talking about, I went on Wegovy and now I don't pick my nails or bite my nails anymore. There's an overlap between appetite circuits in the brain and reward pathways involved in addiction. So there is some overlap. We don't fully understand it completely yet, but I personally feel so much more happier that I'm not addicted to sugar. I've always been a chubby kid. I've never had a very good relationship with food. I've always associated food more with pleasure than with nutrition. And now I feel that I no longer need sugar to feel better about myself. I can eat fruits and vegetables and I'm good to go.
I've also heard a doctor say, even though we may not know exactly how this plays out over the next couple of decades, we do know how untreated obesity plays out. And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at why people are going on Ozempic or Wegovy. I think everybody at this table probably knows somebody who's taking it simply for vanity reasons, want to lose a little bit of weight, not a lot of weight. And this is where it feels tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our societal concept of what it means to be overweight and obese and the natural treatment is that, we got to diet, we got to exercise. There are things that we can do ourselves to offset our physical condition and can improve our physical condition. But what Dr. Almandoz was telling me is that our bodies evolutionarily are kind of built to retain fat. When we try to lose weight, our bodies put up a resistance. So the concept of like, oh, you just need willpower to lose weight, because that's something that we hear time and time again. You just need more willpower to push that, slice of cake away at the dinner table. It's not really that. We actually have physiological processes that work against us when we try to lose weight. Again, I don't want to say that everyone needs to go on these drugs, but what we do see, what the research shows, is that these drugs can help with inflammation due to several different metabolic conditions. I did a story in 2023. It was a study in mice, and they basically found that when you injected GLP-1 drugs into mice, it helped to calm down the immune system. And so we're seeing that these drugs can help on so many different levels for so many metabolic conditions, especially ones that have an inflammatory component to them. So I don't know what the future of GLP-1 drugs look like intersected with our larger society. But the thing is that here we have modern medicine providing us a solution. Again, not endorsing, but it helped me so much.
This makes me wonder if one of the joys in my life, which is eating, it makes me wonder whether that activity in the future will change. What do you guys think about that? Is there a future where, restaurants are not these convivial places to sit with other people and overindulge?
That sounds like a world I don't want to live in.
It's tough. I know.
I'm not interested.
I'm sure that there are plenty of people listening, whether you work in the restaurant industry or you just love food, who also care about their bodies. Like, you can be all these things, but it makes me concerned about the future of food. And I do believe there's a world where we don't have excessive American-sized portions. Like, there are so many parts of the world that just eat normal amounts of food. And here in the United States, we've made such a hobby out of eating too much. How could we make sense of both of those things? How can we still care about our bodies and love food, but not be robbed of the restaurant experience? Like, Miriam, I feel like you are right now.
Do I miss going to restaurants? There is an element, especially as you said, it's going to a restaurant, hanging out with friends. Like, I went this Saturday to a restaurant with a bunch of friends here from work. I couldn't really eat the same way as I previously did. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. I mean, it was a good thing that I could at least eat something and I'm there hanging out with my friends. But then I also can't really enjoy the food the same way. So I don't know, there's like a catch-22 right here.
I'm going to a completely economic place in my head, though, where you cannot possibly sustain a restaurant in 2025 without probably having more generous portions to justify the cost of something for the warranted food costs that it is with where we are as a country, just in terms of how expensive everything is.
Put that in perspective. Like, if you're already ordering the salmon and that dish is already going to be $45, you get a larger portion of salmon because that's a high dollar value. Right?
Right. And so what I'm saying is, okay, what if a restaurant reacted to people wanting smaller portions all of a sudden? They're not going to be able to justify the food costs for the $22 because someone's going to be pissed that their food is small and $22. Like, I do think it's actually a really interesting conundrum. I go at it more from a business side than it is accommodating the people there, because at the end of the day, everybody and their mom offers you a to-go box. And I love when they're pretty. I love when I get pretty to-go boxes and a matching bag to go with them. It's true.
I just want to point out one thing, though, that just because you go on these drugs for weight loss does not mean that you're going to be on these drugs for forever. Mm-hmm. So at some point, you will be able to resume your restaurant experience. Like, for me, I've reached my goal weight and my brain has changed. I don't feel the same way about restaurants as I did before. But that's not to say that, someone else in my situation, they've reached their goal weight. Maybe they can go back into the restaurant experience and maybe they'll do it differently. Maybe they'll do it more healthily. I don't think this is the end of restaurants. I just think this is a new era of how restaurants do food.
Even if you're off the drugs, maintenance looks different than it did before you were on the drug. I think you're probably still at least only eating half of your food.
But I think restaurants must evolve with this the same way they did it in the pandemic. For example, they created all these things to get going the business. This is going to be the same, I think. Do you have cravings for different food now or no food at all?
I love me some savory.
Okay.
I will go, there's Dots pretzels. I have hooked my whole family on them and they're not on Ozempic. Well, my dad is diabetic, so he is on Mounjaro, but I love savory food more than I love sweet food. So that is actually a very interesting observation.
So guys, even though we're talking about Ozempic, I brought cookies.
No,
I don't know.
Sarah? Why?
Somebody has to be on the other side of this conversation, I feel. And
I also just want to point out that me talking about Ozempic, I'm sitting directly across from Sarah, so I feel like we're in some kind of debate team.
No, I know. You're not in trouble, Miriam. And I hope we don't hate each other at all.
No, I love you.
You look fantastic, by the way. This is me about to open a box of Oreos. Let me tell you quickly, these are Post Malone Oreos. Now, why is Post's name on Oreos? I don't know. His name is on everything. His name is on Bud Light. His name is on Raisin Cane's. Apparently, his people made a deal with Oreos. And why do we care? Because Post Malone is from DFW. So that's my local hook, okay, everybody? But these are salted caramel Oreos with a shortbread flavor cream. Now, Miriam, do you want one?
I would absolutely love one.
She wants one. Okay.
I hope these are better than the Coca-Cola ones.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I forgot about how bad those were. Here you go.
Thank you.
It's really something to eat cookies as we talk about Ozempic. Back to the topic. I wonder if there's a day when we are going to do things other than eat at restaurants together. Because I am concerned if this doesn't become the activity, the central reason why you're in the place. And we've already talked about how people younger than me are drinking less. So we're not going to drink too much. We're not going to eat too much. What are we doing? Are we playing mahjong at restaurants?
I played mahjong at Birdie's on Sunday afternoon.
Wow.
Or are we playing cards? Is gambling going to come to Texas and we can just start playing blackjack in the middle of dinner?
Well, remember, gambling is an addiction, and Ozempic helps with addiction, so maybe not.
We would gamble in moderation because of this.
What do you think of the cookie, y'all?
It's a lot better than the Coca-Cola one.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
For those who didn't have the Coca-Cola one, because that is not a fair barometer, we thought those were disgusting. And may I insert that I think these are delicious?
Okay, this is going to be controversial. I don't really like Oreos that much, but I love these. It's the salt in them.
No, I'm with you, Miriam. I think a regular Oreo could do better. And when Oreo started doing more things, I thought that was exciting.
I actually love Oreos, typically double stuff at a minimum. I often refer to Oreos as my favorite chemical because there's nothing from nature in these. And I bet there's nothing from nature in the Post Malone ones either. They say Posty Go on the side of them. I think they're fine. They're a little sweet for me.
Yeah, for me, it's even like sweeter than the chocolate, I think.
I think it's sweeter than the chocolate ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
As somebody who's tried a lot of weird food on this podcast, these are some of the better things that we've sampled, and during an Ozempic episode, no less.
We can't technically recommend GLP-1s, but we can technically recommend an Oreo.
Yeah. There you go. Well, Miriam, you are wonderful company, whether you're eating dinner with us or not.
Thank you.
And it's cool to hear your personal story. I've pulled you aside to ask you about this a bunch of times. I'm just fascinated by the idea that you have researched this deeply and then had personal experience with it. There's no better person, in my opinion, to talk about both the personal and the science parts of this.
And do you know what's so interesting? So I've been doing research and reporting on GLP-1 drugs going back at least 2 years at my previous job as well. And because of how much I knew about them and how much we still don't truly understand them, I was actually opposed to using these drugs.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but it came a point in my life where I tried doing weight loss the natural way, but it wasn't working. And my triglycerides were very high and I was almost pre-diabetic and I was getting chest pain because I was working remotely during the pandemic and I had gained a ton of weight. And my mom, a doctor, was like, you know what? You could literally get a heart attack. It was a big wake up call for me to be like, okay, let me just try this out and see if it works for me.
Amazing. Well, it's a really good story. It's really
congratulations.
Miriam actually has a story on this topic, and you can read that by visiting dallasnews.com/food. We're about to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to catch up on some of the latest restaurant happenings in North Texas.
Central Market is really into food, like fish flown in so fresh it still has jet lag into food. Our sourdough starter has been around since grunge was a thing into food. We're talking more prime cuts than a greatest hits album into food. Central Market is really into food. If you are too, then we're the HQ for you. Whether you're a make every recipe in the cookbook foodie or a my favorite recipe is reheat type who just digs the delectable, no place makes every day more delicious like Central Market. Really into food. Shop now at centralmarket.com.
Welcome back. In just a minute, we have some restaurant news to share with you. But first, a quick reminder that giving our podcast a good review on Apple Podcasts helps other people find it. So if you like it, please say so. And if you don't, well, you can just skip that part. So Sarah, can you walk us through what was our biggest story in the past few days?
Yes, we'll get to the big news right away. The Meddlesome Moth in the Dallas Design District is closing. You have many months to get there, but their last days of service will be late May of this year. Now, we hate to see any restaurant close, but this restaurant closure was way bigger in terms of interest among our readers than any others. I think we should unpack this a little bit. So the Moth has been open since 2010, and it opened in the Design District back when that was not this kind of hot, vibrant food neighborhood that it is becoming today. An economist would then recognize that the rent prices weren't as high in 2010 as they are in 2025. And you know what's going to happen next. The Meddlesome Moth is closing because rent went up. And very simply, the owner of the Moth and the landlord couldn't come to an agreement on how much to increase the rent. That's really hard to hear because so many people love the Meddlesome Moth and just want it to thrive in the place that it is.
We ran the numbers on this. The actual sums were not disclosed for this publicly, but it's something that we could run numbers on. And it's more than 75%. It was closer. It was over 78%, which is absolutely a bonkers appreciation great for that neighborhood. However, Meddlesome Moth really prided itself on staying as affordable as it could while serving really high quality food. And you wonder when you look around a neighborhood like Design District, full of your Carbones and things like that, which have their place, where can you just go grab something that's not going to break the bank?
That was the Moth's identity, right? Good food, but reasonable prices. And that more than 75% rent increase was from the beginning, right? It was from 2010 to 2025. It's not like they wanted to increase it 75% in the last couple of months, but still, a business owner behind that restaurant has to decide, like, can I make money if I pay that much rent? And he decided that he couldn't. You know, more than just a story of economics, you then turn to the next part, which is, are we pricing out local restaurateurs in the Dallas Design District and possibly in other Dallas neighborhoods? This is a really important discussion, in my opinion, because the guy behind the Moth owns, I think, 35 other restaurants. He is born and bred in Dallas. He certainly knows the industry. So this is not a first timer. You know, it's not somebody who got lucky with the Meddlesome Moth. He knows how to run a business like this. He also knows he now can't afford the rent in the Dallas Design District. And who can afford that rent? Well, a lot of folks coming in from LA, Miami, New York City, Vegas, Scottsdale, Arizona, who think that Dallas is affordable in terms of rent. And it is, if you compare it to some of those other cities. But what Shannon Wynn, the owner of Meddlesome Moth, has asked, and what other Dallas restaurateurs have asked me too, is when do we get to the point where these expensive restaurants are everywhere? And those of us in Dallas who live here are supposed to support these restaurants, right? Like, restaurants can't come in from out of town and be full of out of towners. Restaurants come in from out of town and they're mostly full of Dallas people. So do like Imelda and Anna and me, do we have enough money and all of our friends to keep these expensive restaurants afloat?
Well, and what's fascinating is that these restaurants that are coming in from out of town typically are getting bigger restaurant spaces than they ever had in the cities that they came from, maybe with the exception of Las Vegas. But typically they are expanding their square footage, and you would think population-wise it could sustain it, but it's also Dallas salaries aren't the same as New York salaries. One of the largest pieces of feedback that we received in terms of what's coming up next in new restaurants in 2025, or what do you hope to see? This is something that Claire had spearheaded. And people said, not restaurants from out of town. And I think people are feeling that tension. And I'm not a please don't come here type of person. I just think it begs the question of two things. One, can Dallas restaurants survive like you're saying, Sarah? And what is Dallas food? And I think about this all the time. And so it was a big conversation point for me and some friends over the weekend, because we look around and we do so many types of cuisine well, but what's Dallas cuisine? And how does this ecosystem feed into that? Because if we don't think of that as our identity, what are we going to do?
And do you think, guys, now that Michelin is in Texas, is a call for all these restaurants from outside?
Yeah, that's such a good point, Imelda. Michelin being in the 5 cities in Texas now perhaps suggests that we have an appetite for this sort of fancy food or the tasting menus or the finer dining. But we keep coming back to this idea, like, where do all of us eat on weekdays? Where do we have lunch in the middle of our workday? People would go to a place like the Meddlesome Moth for that. And the Design District, you know, still today has art galleries and interior designers and florists, in addition to tourists staying at the Virgin Hotel and eating at expensive restaurants like Carbone and the coming soon Delilah. You know, we don't know what will replace Meddlesome Moth, but you have to guess it's going to be a restaurant that's going to cost me, the diner, more to eat lunch or dinner there. And is that what we want?
What we do want is to not use the valet parking in that parking lot, because it's not against the valet. They're always so nice. They're always out of parking. So they're like, we can't help you. So good luck going and finding a spot. Yeah, you're going to be late to your coffee at Ascension, sweetie.
Yeah, you got to wonder if the parking lot situation is going to be reconfigured a little bit. There's a fun, like, historical bit about that building where the Meddlesome Moth has been for 15 years. Previously, it was a tile shop. And Shannon Wynn, the owner of the Moth, left the sample tiles on the floor. Oh. So, like, if you go into the restaurant today, you can sort of picture where, like, this tile was being shown off and that tile was being shown off, because, like, tables are on mismatched tile sections. You know, it wasn't meant to be a restaurant. And the parking suggests so.
Well, you hope that that tile gets to stick around in a next life.
Yeah. Beyond the restaurant, And also, we are losing some pieces of art. Your story said about the stained glass.
Yes, I wrote about the 3 famous stained glass windows that will be up for sale once the moth closes. I gotta say, you guys, this is one of my favorite food adjacent stories to write in a really long time. The story is that there were 3 stained glass windows commissioned for the Hard Rock Cafe in Dallas on McKinney Avenue in the 80s. When the Hard Rock Cafe closed, those 3 stained glass windows of Elvis, Chuck Berry, and Jerry Lee Lewis, they were pried out of the walls and put in storage, and they were almost ruined. They were chipped. I don't think they were stored exceptionally well. And Shannon Wynn bought them, sort of on a whim, not because he likes stained glass even, but because he thought they were cool, and they had 3, famous rock stars on them, and they came from a building that he remembers. And they didn't fit in the Meddlesome Moth. So they are 13 feet tall, and the ceilings at the Moth are 12 feet tall.
Wow.
So he flew them against the ceiling and lit them from behind. And if you go in the Moth, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These 3 stained glass windows are kind of the centerpiece of the place. And if you know more about Shannon Wynn, you know he is an art collector and that he just has a deep love for Dallas history. He'll say he didn't have a deep love for these 3 guys necessarily. He just didn't want something to happen to them. So when the Moth closes, they are kind of hoping that a museum or a private collector wants to buy them. And I can't disclose what Shannon Wynn paid for them, but I can tell you what they're worth today. Heritage Auctions thinks they're worth between $300,000 and $500,000. And Shannon Wynn's only rule is that they have to stay together because they were created in Dallas for Dallas, and they are now a trio. He calls them the Holy Trinity. And if you have $500,000 to spare, now you know that they're for sale.
You can read more about this by visiting dallasnews.com/food. That's all the time we have for this week. Stay up to date with the food team stories at dallasnews.com/food. And listen to all of our episodes by following Eat Drink DFW wherever you find your podcasts. Special thanks to our producer, Julie Fisk. For the news, I'm Anna Butler. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Eat, Drink, DFW from the Dallas Morning News is made possible by Central Market.